At first, we didn't think it was real, and then we saw blood.
Newtown, Connecticut, the site today of a mass shooting, and this time, gunfire aimed at elementary school children.
Say a student opened fire on classmates, leaving 1 dead and 4 others wounded.
The results of a new study presented this week at the annual meeting of the Radiological Society of North America in Chicago shows that playing violent video games measurably alters the regions of the brain associated with cognitive function and emotional control.
Whether or not games add to violence, that's more, as a parent, the responsibility of parenting than gaming.
The school shooting is at Columbine High School.
When are we going to connect the dots on all of this? This is a very sick world where the children play the sickest games and watch the sickest movies and commit the sickest acts we've ever seen in history.
After these shooting incidents has gotten really dumb. It's always been dumb. Everyone talks about games in really dumb ways. But now that it's been even more heavily linked to this violence thing, it's really, I don't know, a boring way to talk about it and I think a dishonest way to talk. But I think there is too much violence in games. I think this is a question that's hard to avoid. But what the nuance that people are missing a lot of the time, I think, is that a lot of times games are dealing with it subversively. A lot of times they are dealing with it in these kind of mindless ways or ways that aestheticize it in problematic ways, and sometimes it's, I don't know, cartoonish, and it's hard to call something like Mario actual violence, yet there is always still the killing of the Goombas, involved there. You wouldn't go out and buy, Apocalypse Now and show it to an 8-year-old because it wouldn't make sense to them and it would just be violent, these kinds of things, but there are things to get out of Apocalypse Now. If you're a parent and you're buying something for your kid, buy them World of Goo, buy them Minecraft, don't be buying them Battlefield 4.
I am the manager here, so this is like my career. So it upsets me when people blame it on video games.
So maybe, do you play a lot of video games?
I don't play video games at all.
Oh, you don't?
I just run the store.
I mean, I wouldn't let a young kid play Grand Theft Auto.
Well, I think video games are good for kids. I think it helps stimulate their brain, and my husband has ADHD and it actually helps him with that.
I think it has no link to video games whatsoever.
I guess it could play a part in it.
I think there is. You do?
Definitely.
Research on exposure to television and movie violence suggests that playing violent video games will increase aggressive behavior.
I think everyone is aware of the fact that there are contradictory studies, and then each side just kind of discounts the other ones. Now, I do not agree with the NRA's position in general. They're definitely the ones that I'm more opposed to.
There exists in this country, sadly, a callous, corrupt, and corrupting shadow industry that sells and stows violence against its own people through vicious, violent video games with names like Bulletstorm, Grand Theft Auto, Mortal Kombat, and Splatterhouse.
Games, just because of how the industry has evolved and how culture has structured around it, have tended to be about violence a lot.
We've been fighting, funny choice of words, that topic for ages. Games have always had violence. There's a section of the industry, just like the section of the movie industry, for instance, that has massively violent games, or movies, or pornographic movies, and they still persist. They still exist. There's always going to be people who buy that, and as long as there's people who buy that, there's going to be someone who supplies it.
It is my very strong opinion that it's the parents' responsibilities to control the content of what they put in front of their kids that are under a certain age. Each human is different. Each human, as a parent, you're going to have to determine at what point you start trusting them to allow them to make their own decisions. But up until that point, you are their parent. You need to be responsible for what it is that they are putting in front of their eyeballs.
We go through a rigorous process of what we can and can't have in our games, and then what they will be rated, and then who will be able to purchase those games. I don't know if it's just a matter of time. I mean, that's a relatively new system that's been in place, like only maybe the past 10 years, the ESRB stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe it will just be a matter of time for it to be as omnipresent you know, R, NC-17, PG-13, that sort of stuff, people will just recognize OM. That's what that means.
Obviously, the Clancy games employ violence in prosecuting the missions that you have to get done and everything like that. One thing I like about the context that Clancy games gives for these, though, is that you are generally a military or otherwise government-sanctioned professional who is out doing their job. Even in a game like Far Cry, you are a person who has been, you know, taken prisoner by pirates and are trying to help an oppressed native population fight against those pirates. You know, so for me, the context is a lot of what it's about.
We don't glorify violence. We don't go out of our way to put something in front of the player and make a situation where they're blurring this line between reality and the video game. We definitely don't want that. It allows us to scratch that itch without actually having to perform anything violent. You could very easily get me into an argument where I'm going to say we allow players to do things that they want to do without any harm coming to anyone in the real world, and that's a good thing.
There's these famous scenes in the Metal Gear Solid series. The character that the player controls is being tortured and you can't escape or anything. To put this kind of helplessness on a player is something that no other medium can do. While it might not be the best anti-torture statement ever made, it's doing it differently and interestingly.
Is that right or wrong? Well, again, is it right for me to say that's wrong for someone else to watch? At least here we have that whole First Amendment thing, you know, the freedom of speech. You know, you're not necessarily going to like everything you see or hear, but that doesn't mean that you should tell someone else what they should be able to see and hear. So my view is that there's always going to be someone who wants that content, and so therefore there's always going to be a company who's going to generate that content. And if it ever goes away, it's because human nature changes, and I don't think human nature is going to change anytime soon.
I am certainly against the overabundance of violence in the medium from an artistic perspective, from I want them to be better. If there is one arty or smart thing in your game, but to get there you have to shoot 100 people in the head, that's boring.
Years from now, will shooters still be the prominent genre? Maybe not. You know, like, we didn't think that games like World of Warcraft would be possible 20 years ago, and they're making more money than anything else. So I don't know if video game violence in the sense of like running around firing a weapon first person and having a commentary on that will always be this continuous issue that's going to continue to escalate.
Video games are in a similar period to early ballet. They are just trying to break away from these traditions of toys and children's games and violence, but, you know, are about to come into their own. I think that video games have a really great future coming up. They're going to do what music did in the late 50s, early 60s, I think. Interesting things are going to start getting done. That's really going to push these art things forward.